The Friday Night's video in our second master series. I do believe this is 32nd video in our second master series and the sixth video in looking at level meters. So basically the first understanding here, we talked about looking at the R128s and the loudness units and where I think that might be applicable. Those, as well as what was, in my humble opinion, good uses for the VU meter. Now, that is very much dependent on you and how you see it and where they can be useful to you, because I do not want to dictate that. If they make you a better engineer using them anywhere, then they're great tools. All of them are great tools to help you. And we talked about the K system also, and it's how that can be applicable in certain situations, and that is an evaluation that you have to make. Now, basically, when we get in here, after you've sat down, you've read about them some and thought about it, the biggest systems that are going to be of most value, we've talked about with the VU meter, we've talked about when we're dealing with the loudness units and where they can be helpful. And when we get into and we start dealing with our normal level meters. Now, whether we are doing we have mixing issues going on, or we're doing processing, or we're doing gain staging, and the issues we've talked about with our oscilloscope and we talked about with our spectrometers, that these give a much simpler view of this. So whenever we're going through here, whether it's a short amount of time or one moment in time or a longer moment in time or a longer moment in time, the way these tools can help us. And the biggest consideration to really help you is to help you get it open so that it's open up in a window somewhere or on a separate monitor or somewhere that you start really utilizing it. So you can start seeing norms of what you're doing. So you can start seeing where it can be applicable. No matter what you're doing, that now you have at least 3 tools open that are helping you make decisions as you go through doing anything when you're dealing with the audio, and to take into consideration. Not only do you have the individual tracks dealing with whether you're peaking and clipping, or you're trying to see what is its maximum level, in a certain area, in a moment in time, or a certain short area in time, and its dynamic range in that certain amount of time, where that's going to be helpful, what kind of restrictions you want to have on the dynamics in your productions, because they're going to be mixed in with other things. And from the last master series, it's very obvious that you might not want so much dynamic fluctuation happening, on certain tracks, or when you're mixing things together. And the median, get really used to seeing, what you're looking at your RMS and what kind of median is happening on individual tracks in certain areas during certain things happening, and when you want to loosen that up a little bit or can allow that to be a little looser, and when you need to tighten that up a little bit, because you're getting a little bit different readings there, that, you've got this peak, you've got this dynamic range, and then you've got this median. All 3 of those together are really going to help you make some determinations on those individual tracks, because of you getting better and better and better of understanding what that should look like as you become a better engineer, so that when you start mixing things together, what you're going to be looking for on those individual tracks. These are 2 individual tracks, to when they mix together, what of their individualities are acceptable, and at what levels, where they're peaking, where their dynamic range fluctuation. I mean, we talked about that a lot in the last master series, about how important that is to constrain that. And we even talked about, dynamic issues getting really compressed to try to really constrain that because of certain type of productions, and the medians of those, and what that's going to be on that output. So you've got those 2, and then what that is producing, those are summed together. They're going to cause this other output that has certain peak levels and hold times, dynamic ranges of their own produced from the dynamics coming from them, and medians produced from the medians summed of the other 2 tracks. Now, this can be a mouthful, but these you getting these tools out and really starting to visualize the music and what is happening and being able to relate that so that whenever you're doing any type of editing or any type of processing or mixing, that these values start to become more and more valuable to you and more important for you to understand what is happening with them. Otherwise, they have no value. So is without going into this and pointing out tons of things where this is going to be useful, the obvious thing that's more important than anything to get you to understand is the value of you making them useful and understanding what you're looking at when you do certain things. Compression is a prime example. When I start compressing things, this is going to change. These values are going to change between the certain tracks. When I've done that on two different tracks, the values of the both of those and the amount of compression I've done on either one of those for some certain type of production or some certain situation at some given moment in time or some short area of time or longer area of time using automation or something like that, and the product that produces because of what's coming next to get mixed on top of that and what might need to be changed. These tools, this level meter is giving you have your spectrometers to look at that are really giving a lot of information about, levels and things like that. Your oscilloscope is giving you that a little bit differently to help you evaluate levels over time and at given moments. And your level meters are giving that information to you in a different way, a much simpler way, but a very valuable way about what is overall, levels. Either being peak levels and dealing with peak levels that you're trying to stay under minus 3 dB, or clipping levels or dynamic range levels between some certain area that you can't really see that on the waveform very well, or on an oscilloscope and a spectrogram it might be hard to see, but you can sure map out really quickly what the dynamic range level in some certain area is, or at some moment, with your level meter here. And a median, it's fluctuating between 2 dB, 1 dB, 3 dB, and what's acceptable for its place in the production, depending on when you start mixing things together, how much the dynamics, and a median of understanding that, and then the median below and the median that it produces. All these things can be very helpful once you get used to utilizing it. So more valuable than me sitting down and going, and then in this situation that we'll pull out the level meter and see exactly the fluctuation in dynamics and median and peak that is happening at this given moment when we are doing with this saxophone and this jazz production. That is not going to be nowhere near as helpful to you as me telling you to get the meter out and start utilizing it and start seeing that. Whenever you're doing anything, the meter's open, you're checking out. What does that do? When I'm putting on the compression reverberation, or I start doing this or that or da-da-da, or adding harmonics and da-da-da, what's it causing happening? Where is it boosting it, lowering it? Am I, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da? That everything you do, you can relate in some way, that the level meter is going to help you see levels, dynamics, medians, and things like that in a different way than the last 2 meters we've been looking at, to help you make better decisions as an audio engineer. Now, granted that during processing and editing, the values are limited in value about seeing sound and things like that, but the levels fluctuating and moving around, their peaks, their RMSs, and their dynamics are very valuable, because as you're affecting that, it's going to affect the production. When you're dealing with gain staging, these things are hugely important, because not only do you get a set level that you can visually set that's maximum, also you get a little bit of dynamic information, so you can decide whether if you're going to compress it or not because of what's coming up underneath it next. And you've got a median to work with on your decision of some type of median and its fluctuation of median for your gain staging decisions. And these are invaluable to you, and the more you utilize them, the more valuable they will become. Now, as far as mixing issues, it's going to point out the same type of things. Anytime you're looking at mixing issues, that with your level meter out, that you're going to get certain information from the spectrogram, certain information from the oscilloscope, and your level meter is going to give you other information about what's happening whenever you're having mixing issues, whether it's gain staging issues, reprocessing issues, or processing itself issues, or compression, dealing with the actual, the actual mixing itself, what their products are, what their individualities are, because you will eventually start to see these things as normal for what you're doing. So as you become a better producer, that you're seeing, well, in this situation, I know that I've got this median happening between these two that's producing this, or this dynamics range here that I can allow more dynamics range on this track sitting on top, or on this track I can't have as much dynamic range because of what's coming underneath it, or it's the dynamics are way too much that are starting to muddy things. Things are bouncing on top of each other, causing mixing issues to where things start riding on top of each other where they shouldn't. I can go on and on and on, which is not nowhere near as helpful as you pulling out the meter and thinking about these things. And thinking about is important, so that as you go through on the track and you're doing all the work you do to it, and when you're recording, when you're editing, when you're processing, when you're doing subgroup mixing, when you're doing mixing, and when you're doing mastering, that these things all become hugely important for you to help better target your decisions. And as you start to hone in your targeting ability to a good product, that you will utilize these level meters to help make better decisions about what you're doing, so that you have less question about whether you're making a good decision or not, because between your ears and your eyes now, you have 3 wonderful meters that are going to point out most issues you may run into during the production. And it's just up to you to refine your abilities to make good decisions based on your ears and your eyes. So at that point, that now it basically becomes an artistic decision on your part that was acceptable. And what you've decided to do and how you've decided to do something is going to fall between certain parameters and norms most of the time, unless you just have an artistic quirk and go off the wall, that you'll get used to seeing certain things happen and doing certain things way, and it'll show itself on your level meters, on your spectrometers, on your oscilloscope as something that is way it should look, rather than you flying blind. And these tools will be immensely helpful in helping you make good decisions to make you that next level master audio engineer, because all this information and you understanding every moment in time is important. And what this is going to be showing you for one moment, for a section, a short moment, a median moment, or a long moment in time, that what information and how this is displaying to you, and how that's going to be important in every aspect of the production, like we talked about in the first master series. So it's a pretty simple relation about the level meters, and basically for you to take the level meters to the next level and to help them take you to the next level is for you to be pulling them out, utilizing them, starting to see the value of them, and to use them at every stage while you're producing, so that they can start showing you things that you do, the effects of what you do. And as you get better and you see whether that's a good product or bad product, that you can relate it back to these visualization meters and telling you when you're doing it right or wrong, or if it's acceptable from experience, experimentation, and from producing some good products and understanding what that is over time, which is part of you becoming that next master level audio engineer. So peace, hope, love. I hope you enjoyed this last video on level meters, and I'll see you in the next video.